Hello, and welcome to another episode of Naked with Dr. Money. I'm Dr. Stephanie Ardrey, known as Dr. Money, and every Wednesday at noon, I come to you live to have a conversation. You know the topic. It's about mindset, it's about motivations, and it's about manifestations, right? So each week we have this conversation, and some people wondered, why did I decide to do this? And I said, in our wellness business, people need holistic healing. And that means healing from emotional trauma. Because when you think about your journey is reflective of a set of decisions that you've made. And each of those decisions have certain consequences, right? And so oftentimes it's about what was the context within which you made that particular decision. And if the context changed, would you make a different decision? It's kind of this overarching conversation why I ask people about their mindset. When did they first realize that they had a mindset? Do they believe that their mindset is a result of how they were nature, their personal nature, or how they were nurtured, or a little bit of both? Because again, depending upon all of those things, that's how you begin to realize the influence on perhaps were you socialized a certain way to believe certain things. We see that evidence through religious, through cults, extremist type, groups and mindsets, right? Again, it all boils down to mindset. Well, anyway, I am so excited today. I have a guest, Miss Kiera Lanier. She is a beautiful person inside out. And we were blessed to be introduced, and our friendship formed fastly. She is an artist, she is a producer, she is an entrepreneur, she is a model, and she's just a loving human being. And so I am happy to have had a pleasure to get to know her. We're still building our relationship, both our friendship, but we're building business opportunities and collaborations. And so I just love every time I have an opportunity to engage. So, we had to have her as a guest for Naked with Dr. Money. So I am going to bring Miss Kiera into this conversation so we can get this show on the roll. Hey, lady.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
for inviting me.
Oh, I couldn't wait. I'm so happy that you were available. I was like, yes.
Introduction. Okay, thank you so much. It's
Oh,
it's been a really beautiful privilege to know you, to befriend you, and also to learn so much from you. And so thank you so much for sharing your platform with me.
oh my goodness, my pleasure. I think it's, that's what this is all about, right? We get to go along this journey, and the thing is that you never know when you meet someone. Is it a reason? Is it a season? Or is it a lifetime? And you only learn those things as you go down the journey. So it's like, every day that I vote for you and you vote for me, then okay, that's another day that we're sharing this particular journey, right? And then when we get at a point and we look back, that's when we know. You never know until you you walk that path.
Mhm.
So this conversation I think is so important because I was reading a HR report that was put out talking about the state of mental well-being of employees in organizations, and also describing the state of the well-being based on generations. So this younger generation that's entering the workforce and has now lived through the most stressful period of their life. Their context would be COVID. The world shut down basically. I remember the most traumatic experience that my grandmother's was hers was the Great Depression. So each generation kind of has something that is their thing. I remember when 9/11 hit, that was like, oh my God, who, never, nobody would attack on US. So these kind of markers along your journey influence each of us in different ways. But what has happened is before, post-traumatic stress disorder was typically associated with those who had served in the war. And
Mhm.
so they didn't really think that under normal circumstances, a person could experience it. But what they're finding is kind of post-COVID, how many people are still suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And so in the work that we're doing at the wellness resorts, again, focused on helping people rebalance, their bodies, their mind, bodies, and souls. The reason this work is so important and passionate is because seriously, people are hurting, and it's like, wow, if I can help you to relieve some of that pain in a way that's not as invasive or detrimental, meaning that these same people, most of the options that are being presented have a lot to do with pharmaceutical drugs. And so that is a potential solution. However, it has several consequences,
Right.
to take those drugs, unfortunately. And so we see people who are sick with all these cancer, we see all kinds of things, right? And sadly, we see people still basically at their core unhappy, empty, suffering, grief, and all kinds of things. So this conversation around mindset, I thought would be a great opportunity, one, to bring the conversation forward in a light and easy way, but also to connect to our mental well-being. So
Mhm.
what I have for you is our first question
Okay.
is about your mindset. And so it's kind of a loaded question. It begins with, when did you first recognize that you had a mindset? And part B of that is, do you believe your mindset is a result of how you were nurtured, your nature, or a little bit of both?
Totally. Well, the first question, when did I discover I had a mindset? I realized, well, I kind of discovered by starting to steal books off of my dad's bookshelf. And there were all kinds of, Think and Grow Rich and Napoleon Hills and just books about mindset and business and spirituality. And, you know, those were the foundations of me realizing that I have the power to um, co-author my life with the creator, you know, and that helped shift me out of the victim mindset
Mhm.
to the author mindset, and from there, that puts you in a place of responsibility, of power, and yeah, it just kind of gives you a different level of beast mode. No matter what good or seemingly unfortunate happens, you recognize, hey, my subconscious, my spirit desired this, and why did I desire this? What do I need to learn from this, to grow from this? Um, and then as far as nature versus nurture, I think it's a combination of both. So the environment that I was born into, I had two entrepreneurial parents, a father who's in everything real estate and flipping houses and all of that, my mother who's an interior designer. And so I obviously learned from them that you can create and pave your own way. One of my favorite memories of my father was when I was in sixth grade, and he surprised me at school and gave me an early dismissal. And that early dismissal, he noticed I started my first company, which was making beaded jewelry earrings. And so he decided to surprise me and nurture this desire that I had to be an entrepreneur. And he didn't tell me where we were going. He just gave me a early dismissal, and we drove for like 2 hours. And I found out when we finally got out the car that we were at an entrepreneurial convention. These people, listen, Dr. Sis. Okay, that's what I call her, y'all. Dr. Sis is her name. Okay. Well, these people there, I was the only child. Everybody else there had huge advancement inventions in agriculture and computer chips and all of these things. And then he said, all right, you sit your caboodle right up there because you're just as important, with
Mhm.
their beaded earrings that I've been
Mhm.
selling to my neighbors and on African markets and stuff. And so I greatly champion my parents for starting my mindset early on, as you do with your son, to, as my father says, take no quick no's but slow yeses. And that's the spirit that you have to have when you are your own sales team and everything. But also I think it's also important, especially when we're talking about the healing work, that now as you grow, you have to learn that we also have to be our own parents. We also have to nurture our own self in the areas of love and discipline that maybe we didn't get, um,
Mhm.
to do that kind of work, that spiritual work, that mental work, and also sometimes the physical and emotional work as well. And so because of that, it's not just the great foundation of my parents. I have to keep fueling my mind,
Mhm.
and feeding my mind and body, materials that are going to give me advanced skills to nurture my purpose and dream into action, as well as that keep me motivated, that keep me healthy and keep me going. So, yeah, I think the two major principles are, when you know that you're a co-author with God, to write this life, you put yourself back into the seat of responsibility, and to give our parents grace for what they did do and what they couldn't do, for us to learn how to parent ourselves and nurture ourselves.
Oh my goodness, that is such a perfect and complete, a beautiful response because you're right. A lot of times people, things happen along the journey, right? And I don't know, have you ever attended Landmark?
I know about it, but I
Okay.
haven't. Mhm.
So the big thing that Landmark helps people understand is that kind of just the way our brains work, things happen, they do. But it's not the thing that happened, it's that dependent upon our lens, we make it mean something.
Right.
And then because we make it mean that thing, then we take on a new behavior in response to that thing that we've made whatever happened become for us, right, mean, when half the time that's not even the truth. It didn't mean that.
Mhm.
Something happened.
Mhm.
That part, that's all it is.
Mhm.
But what you made it mean don't mean that that's really what it meant, which is why when you look at, people witnessing a car accident at an intersection and 10 people will have a different thing that they saw. But it's because depending upon where they were located, their point of view only revealed what they could see, not all of these other, 10 locations, right? And so it's the same thing of how our thoughts, what we focus on, if we walk in, and it's amazing because some of these little sayings that people would say, I'd say, like, what does that really mean, right? But you say it. So, like, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? It's like, yeah, now I really, really get what that means because dependent upon your perspective,
Mhm.
then that's going to inform what you do. If you see things as half empty, as lacking, then you're going to go through life trying to clutch on, trying to, if you see things as abundant, as fluid, you're going to be open, you're going to be looking for opportunities to collaborate. And guess what? Whichever perspective you choose is what your reality is going to be. So it's like you're right. You're right if you think it's negative, and you're right if you think it's positive,
Right.
because how you think is what's going to be determine what it's going to be.
Exactly. And sometimes the work is, even if someone did mean you harm, you create your own delusion that they meant me well, so you can rewrite a new brain pattern in your mind.
And
So,
that's powerful right there. And that's why when people say, well, why do we have to work on mindset? And it's because sadly, culturally, some of the influences take a real negative bent. So you're bombarded with kind of the things to be afraid of, the things to be concerned of, the things to be, anxious about. And so you need to calm down from that. I noticed the gift that I received over the last, I guess, 3 years where I spent so much time in Jamaica because oftentimes the properties where I stayed, there wasn't a TV in the room in your suite. A lot of places don't have TVs, which is great. And then the ones that do didn't necessarily have all of the US channels and stations. So what I realized is that I ended up with a real healing experience of being completely disconnected from, that news and that energy.
Mhm.
And, again, that is why healing is, so necessary and so important. So, okay. So, okay, all right. We talked about these mindset. Now, I believe that when I look at your career to date and your experiences, that definitely your mindset is key in terms of how you've manifested, or your motivations to go after things that you've wanted to manifest. So let's walk through a little bit more of the journey from the young entrepreneur at the conference with your father, and then what happened, fill in some more gaps along that journey.
It kind of looks like a tumbling forward, as a who is that said? Was it Will Smith that said something about falling forward? Um, yeah, so at my core, I've always been a musician. I've always been a writer, and I've always been very passionate about helping people and helping people to heal themselves. And so at my core, I mean, the jewelry thing was just kind of a pit stop along the way, because in that way, healing was making people feel good about themselves. It was something beautiful that felt adornment, which is an element of healing, how you adjusting your self image. But I continued forward after high school, and I went for a degree in journalism. And along the way, I continued to pursue music, and I was a contestant and finalist on American Idol. I ended up getting a lot of different fans from around the world, which was great, and it was encouraging. And I continued to create my first EP and album. I moved to California. My first year was crazy. Literally, all the plans that I thought that I had, they just completely turned over on their head. And I had to, wow, that was that was that was my, as you say, 9/11 or COVID. Like my
Mhm.
first year in LA, when I'm the oldest child of four now,
Okay.
and so when I made this whole big goodbye, album release celebration, if things got hard, I was going to stick it through and figure out how to make it happen. And so, to be real, my first year in LA, I lived in 10 different places by the grace of 10 different people, because the place that I thought that I had was not stable.
Mhm.
And no matter how much, and at that time, I was on two different TV shows. I was an actor featured on Empire, and then also an actor featured on The Shy. And no matter how many applications I put in, no matter how many things, I thankfully was able to get on my feet from getting some of my music placed in a TV show. And from there, that got me, you know, um, several $1,000s that I was able to get myself an apartment and go on tour and all these things. And I realized, hey, a lot of musicians don't understand that this is an opportunity to have a revenue stream through music licensing. And so I ended up teaching a few people, and I wrote a course. And that course, if you're interested, is at syncyourmusic.com, syncyourmusic.com. And I've continued since then, now getting accredited in Reiki energy healing, getting training and sound healing, being mentored by several doctors, to include Dr. Sabi's son, several other naturopaths. And I'm at a point now where the healing journey is the forefront of my personal purpose and ministry, where I believe that all of us are our bodies, our minds, and our energetic fields. We are our own churches and temples and courthouses. And so the more that we study and go back to God's law or God's principles in all of these areas, our food, our mind, our thoughts, all of these things. That's what healing is, within us individually. But also, I desire to create what is heaven on earth. And so, this idea and concept of Circle Wellness Society was born, where there's a multi generational community of young, middle, and old, all living in a beautiful, harmonious state of healing, where nutritious foods are bountiful, sunlight and all the elements of nature are woven into how the building is architecturally designed. And it's literally just resetting us back to how we are, supposed to live and experience God within us on a regular basis. And I'm very grateful that we have some opportunities to bring it to life in Senegal. And so we are in our early stages right now that we are selecting our land site. And we have some other offers from other countries that want to help build them, such as Ghana and Liberia and some in the UAE. And yeah, I'm very excited to continue the work. But yeah, it starts with us individually, as souls, as embodiments of that frequency. And I just hope and I believe that it will catch fire.
Oh, I know it's catching fire because guess what? I think as people begin to really consider, you start noticing things. Sometimes people are so occupied by their journey that they're not paying attention to what's happening around them. But then
Mhm.
there's a contingent of others that are going, wait a second, I'm noticing some things. There are some shifts that are definitely happening. And so things like I think of, again, the boomers being such a large generational cohort, but how many of them and how many other people are transitioning at such earlier stages of their lives,
Mhm.
or when you talk about the general sentiment about how people are experiencing their lives. People are in pain.
Mhm.
And when people are living with pain and grief and depression and sadness, there comes a point where it's a breaking point.
Yeah.
And so it influences not only the reason the study that was put out was targeting HR. They interviewed HR leaders to get a survey on how employees were responding on several different markers, within organizations. And it's the thing that they really said they needed the most support with is really mental health.
Mhm.
um, and how in past that's been such, it's evolved from being taboo to being recognized as, it's not a good thing to deprive people from having the ability to get balanced help, because it's going to influence their performance if somebody is struggling and they're unable to sleep. And that's the other thing, people are having diminished sleep quality. There was a marker, I guess, since of course organizations have a lot of women now in leadership roles. And so women that are beginning to go through hormonal changes, menopause,
Mhm.
was another area that was identified. And then, of course, the other markers of, obesity and different chronic conditions and all of those other things, that tend to show up. So, yeah, this work is so important, right? Because when we think about just, you know, our respective life cycles. I knew as a young girl, somebody asked me, well, what would your causes be? And I said, I'm always going to do things to support seniors and support young people because I really think that they should be kind of together. So, in fact, one of the wellness assisted living facilities that I was designing, we were looking at bringing those two elements together, even having like a daycare situation where young kids could be with the seniors, like kind of rent a grandma for a day or whatever, just to create that generational relationship that is so important, because we need that. That was the thing that I wanted so much for my son to have. He had his dad's mom, but I know that if he would have had my mom, like that child He said he was, loved real well, so he's not spoiled, right? And I'm like, exactly. So if I couldn't have loved him anymore, just that extra abundance of a grandmother's love, right?
Mhm.
It's just all of that. So when I listen to the beautiful plans, that you have conceived and really hear, the passion and the backstory, um, I'm not surprised, based on, if you will, our paths crossing at this stage of the journey, right? Because one of the things that I was sharing, I was out with some surgeons yesterday, and we were kind of talking about. I was saying, listen, one of the guys was saying, well, I'm well off. I've done, everything that I needed to do. So now I'm trying to figure out how I can give back. And I'm like, exactly. And I said, and don't you want to have full life? That's what full life of 120 years and beyond allows, is you have longer time to share what you've gained, and you have longer time to continue your journey as a student. Because, for me, I believe that the reason I can be a brilliant teacher is because I'm a brilliant student.
And consistent student.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And multiple skills and disciplines
Yeah.
always to continue to expand.
Yeah.
I think that also comes from, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that also comes from your desire to serve. I think when
Yes.
you have a desire to serve, you
Yeah.
really value having the skills to be
Yes.
excellent at what you're doing, because you know that it affects people.
Yes.
So
It's really that. It's really that, because again, along your entrepreneurial journey, especially when you have the visions, like we have, that are significant, that could often be scary to a lot of people, like, oh my goodness, how can you? And it's like, what it means is that you have to expand who it is you're networking with, because there's other people that share your vision, that have already been called into action. They're waiting for you to show up. And it's like, okay, so where am I supposed to go next? And so it's that guidance that's telling you that, okay, I have to, like yesterday, I had to fight with myself to go out to this dinner. Like, it was like, and it's like, you need to go. So stop it. You need to get out. You need to see people. You can't just be hiding in the house, right? You got to go and meet some people. And oh my God, was it a blessing? Oh my
Mhm.
God, the blessing of who I met last night.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and then you just sat up here and said Liberia, and I'm going, a funny thing. That's
Mhm.
all we talked about last night was Liberia.
Yay!
And this doctor, this surgeon, is good friends with Hill Harper. And I'm like, I hadn't seen, yeah, I'm like, yeah, I represented Hill, years back when he first was getting involved in LA, and he was looking for a beach house. We didn't close on the transaction, but I do remember taking him, to look for homes that he was considering buying. But I liked, his personality and his demeanor about his business, and so I felt like he was going to be successful, in his career, but also in business as well. He seemed like he had a well balanced background and experience. And so, you want to see those things. But when we were talking about Liberia, we're talking about wellness, we're talking about the opportunities, but more importantly, the opportunity to bring complete ecosystems to bear, and to be able to facilitate growth for millions and millions of families, and that's what he could really sense, is that I'm a builder. It's like, yeah, I know how to build scalable organizations,
Mhm.
and to create a complete supply system and all of those things, and ensure that in doing so, that the processes make sense. Lean Six Sigma black belt, that's a skill set that allows you to look for operational inefficiencies
Exactly.
and to improve upon those processes. So again, as you're creating new innovative strategies, the beautiful thing about innovation is it's just that it's new. You're looking at something perhaps different, but the trick about innovation is just that there's no plan. So you're trying to figure it out as you go. But if you figure it out, then you need to codify it so that other people can now figure it out.
Right.
So, because there wasn't a manual, so you have to figure out the solution and create the manual
Mhm.
so that you can bring some others along. And that's really what We hear people earning a doctorate level degree.
Mhm.
What you're demonstrating is that you understand research at
Mhm.
a certain level. So that is the goal. So, but it's what your particular study of interest. So a medical doctor, a doctor of business, a doctor of engineering, a doctor of whatever, we all have to understand how to put forth a hypothesis and then develop research data to either validate or void that hypothesis.
Mhm.
So when you understand that, so I chose to do my doctoral dissertation. Uh, I used a mixed method study. So a quantitative study is where you're looking at numbers. You're looking at how many numbers of these people behave in this particular way. Whereas a qualitative study gives you a little bit more of kind of this context, what you and I are talking about, that context as it relates to, relationship and all of those things and building upon it. But all of those pieces come together. When
Mhm.
do they show up? Once you set the intention.
Mhm.
Sometimes people stop themselves from going forward because they think that they have to have the how.
Mhm.
When
Yeah,
as a co-creator, you don't have to have the how. You have to know where you are and you have to see the vision of where you're going. And you have to trust in that co-creation process that the Almighty is going to bring forth the how. That's not your assignment.
totally. I mean, I truly believe that my dreams are God's dreams, and God's gonna see to it that God's dreams get fulfilled. Now,
Yes.
the only thing I have to make sure is that uh, I'm not in friction with the flow of God's dream, and God's timing, because of whatever circumstance, thought process, whatever. And so, yeah, I do think that that's a part, of being in flow. That's a part of, as you say, keeping your mindset focused and fixed on your intention. And to go back a little bit, you know, a lot of mental health issues, I think, or stress comes from when you're not being in full flow with
Mhm.
the truth of yourself and your true intention. If you're doing things just to get by, if you're doing all kind of other things that are not your true purpose,
Mhm.
you know, there's going to be resistance. There's going to be grief. There's that can materialize into physical ailment, you know.
Mhm.
And so I do think, and I hope that anyone that's listening here now and live, or and also in the future, the very first um, question I would ask, and maybe auditing your own personal state of wellness, is, am I being, am I showing up as my true authentic self every day? Is the person that I see as my highest version, am I acting as them today? What does my highest, happiest, most fruitful self look like? And am I embodying them in all ways? And also, do my desires also support other people? Support the well-being, or of other people through my gifts and goods and services that I want to bring forth into the world. And if not, um, then I think that's the first thing that we have to address. And it's not only just about our career path. It's, are we giving ourselves what we need every day to just be at our optimal level? Like, for example, some of us need to go out and run up a mountain, and that gives us the energy to go do anything in the day. Some of us need to spend more time with our children. Some of us need to, the point is, don't deny yourself, which only you truly know is what brings you inspiration, creativity, energy, and that's in alignment and flow with who you're called to be in this lifetime.
Mm, my goodness, so beautifully put. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, I love this. Thank you so much, Kira, for being a guest today. I think you've you've shared so much value. It's so great to have these conversations and to be able to, to kind of just reflect and open it up. And so I'm sure that we'll be able to continue this conversation. I would love to have you back as a guest again, and we can talk some more along this journey, because I think what we're really doing is what I had wished some of the ladies that I looked up to when I was coming along and beginning my career, is some of the women I really wished were willing to have been a little bit more of a mentor,
Mhm.
and, kind of be willing to invest some of themselves in the journey. I didn't have a lot of females who were willing to fulfill that role, but also maybe it was because I was in careers occupied by men. So it was, again, also rare, but it was mostly places where men mentored me in the ways that they could, that
Mhm.
helped me to kind of walk down the path. But I always said that I wanted to be a mentor and help to develop the next generation, and that I just wanted to create a different experience, right? So it'd be great to have people that, you vibe with. And so you feed off of one another. It's a good space to be in, and everybody is growing because everyone's contributing, what they have to that space. And so I
Mhm.
find that to be so fulfilling, and I'm excited about what we're going to continue
Me
to
too.
do going forward.
Me too. And I'm very excited for you and your own personal transformation. You have so much skill that you have dedicated your life to master, but now this is your time to shine also as a healer yourself, as a creator yourself, to create your own piece of heaven on earth. And every tool that you have dedicated your life to, you have all the tools now to help bring it, into fruition. No matter what the circumstance looks like it's happening, and it's happening for us in a real way, in a big way, in a way greater than we can even imagine. So, also, anyone who's listening, please support Dr. Stephanie's new ventures. She has incredible wellness packages that she is offering now for her opportunities within Jamaica. And I'm sure maybe you'll share more about that, or maybe you could put a link in the description of the video.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will give more information. And thank you so much. See, sis, you're always looking out.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today.
All righty. Well, have a great rest of your day. And again, I look forward to having you again.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. So, guys, I want to thank you again for joining me. And remember, if it's Wednesday and it's noon Pacific, it's time to join me for another episode of Naked with Dr. Money. It's where we talk about mindset, motivations, and manifestations. And you get to go along the journey with me as I talk to some brilliant minds and have them posit their insights through this conversation as well. So, thank you all. And again, join me next Wednesday, noon Pacific, for another episode of Naked with Dr. Money. I'll see you soon. Be well.